Live painting with your host, Sean Nathan Ricks. Who is Sean Nathan Ricks? Well, that would be me. All right, today, what we're going to be doing is painting some sandstone ruins. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start in here with a little bit of a galaxy. We've got a theme going on. The theme for today is going to be science fiction fantasy, just like a lot of my other paintings, but hey, you know, there's nothing like consistency. So let's get started. First thing we want to do is we want to get an idea of what kind of space we've got to work with in there. And so I'm going to just dip into a couple of different colors here. We're going to go ahead and get our nebula started here in the background. We'll just get some of this pushed around a little bit. The great thing about painting space in the background is your space doesn't have to conform to any kind of norms. So you can make this nebula very nebulous. Imagine that. Okay. We're just going to keep on going here. Nobody has joined in yet, but for the people who are listening to this later on, if you have any questions, always email me, because if you're listening later on, I'm not going to see it live in the chat because I won't be here. All right, let's just go ahead and get this going. Now, I went ahead and prepped my canvas. The first thing that I did was I prepped it with a really nice blue-gray. That'll allow me to paint the sandstone over top of it. It'll also give me a natural curve to the edges of the stone, and it'll allow some of this blue to show through. I used some Payne's gray up in my corners in order to get just a little bit of a good view on sinking the corners out where there's not going to be any light. I've got a bowl down here. Eventually I'll have a fire right there inside the bowl. But again, for right now, let's work on the nebula. Okay, nebulas are fun. They're kind of like painting clouds. If you guys have ever joined in on some of my other ones, you've watched me paint clouds. We don't want to cover up too much down in the bottom. So really right now, all we're doing is just trying to get our white to feel like it's in there. The white's what we're going to build off of for all of our nebula. We're going to be bringing in some permanent black, some phthalo blue, and the paints that I like using for acrylic, I always enjoy using the Master's Touch and the Liquitex. You don't have to spend a lot of money in order to paint. So again, right now, just working on the space nebula in the background. I'm using my trusty makeup brushes that I always like to use. The makeup brushes give me an opportunity to get this really soft blending because, well, hey, that's what a makeup brush is for. And it looks like we've already got a comment from Danner725. Thank you very much. What we're going to do is I'm making a nebula, a space nebula back here, and then I'm going to paint these sandstone ruins. Over here in the corner, this bowl is going to have a fire coming up, and we're going to add a little bit of, instead of all these geometric shapes here, right here in the corner, we're going to have a, let's get it out here a little so it's easier to see. A tree trunk and a bowl with a fire on it. We've got to have a light source in some spots, right? Okay, makeup brushes, guys. Makeup brushes are some of my favorite things to use. You can see them right here. I'll use makeup brushes that are everything from these giant ones all the way down to the small ones. And by the way, if you have not already, please like and subscribe. Take a look at the description. There is a painting giveaway, a free painting giveaway, which we're going to be doing on the 10th. And that's the 10th of January. First thing I'm doing here is I'm just using this one to dry it out and smooth it. And that's before I bring in any of the colors for any of this space nebula. But let's jump into some colors, shall we? Because it's boring without them. I'm going to use some dark red. And I'm just going to bring that around the edges here. The space nebula looks like nothing until you start getting into it. And by all means, if you guys have any kind of questions as I'm going along, please ask them in the comments. There's really not much to it until we can start getting the darks to show through. Contrast is everything in these. So when you bring in your contrast and you start mixing it through, and I'm using some Payne's gray inside this black. I don't want it to be super dark, so the Payne's gray is going to give me the opportunity to have a little bit of transparency. And space nebulas are very much like painting any kind of a cloud. That's really all you're doing is painting clouds. It's just clouds in space. You want to use kind of a clockwise motion on these. As you do that, that's going to give you more of your cloud. You can start to see some of it coming out. When we get a minute, we're going to use a really fine brush and we're going to pull some stars in. And I have a variety of these makeup brushes that are both wet and dry so that I can just push the paint around without having to clean the brush too much. Those clockwise and counterclockwise motions are what gives us this. If you have any questions as I go along, ask them in the comments. I do like to try and keep an eye on that as much as possible. And we just want a real nice fantasy feel to this. And then when we get to the sandstone ruins, you're going to watch those start to pop in. In fact, I'm going to let this dry and move straight over to sandstone real quick. This is where the fun stuff comes in because you get to watch this go in so fast. Get around my brush here. Now sandstone, a great way to mix up sandstone color. Get yourself some medium yellow, some yellow ochre, a little bit of orange, some titanium white. Pull in some burnt sienna, and then also pull in either a blue or you want to pull in some dioxazine purple. That gives you a great sandstone color. You guys are going to watch some of this pop in here. Ready, here we go. I'm going to start out on this one. I want this lighter one to come around the edge here real quick. And I use the brush that's about the same thickness as what my bricks are so that it can just pull it in really nice, smooth, and fast. And you're taking a look at that and you say, hey, that's a little bit white and it's not quite sandstone. I know, because you've got to add more colors than just one. Come on, let's get to it. Let's add a little bit of our yellow. And then we'll come in with some purple in just a moment as well. Now you'll notice that I'm leaving some space in between some of these black lines that I've already got sketched out on the canvas for me. That's because I want some of that blue to shine through just a little bit. It gives me a real nice rounding to the corners. Okay, we're going to dip into a little bit of red and we're going to mix it in the color that we've already got for our sandstone and start bringing in an outside edge. And you can start to see the sandstone forming right before your eyes. Sandstone has got so many different variations and colors to it that you can use a variety of things. What if I want a little bit more yellow? I've got some here. You don't want it to be just one color. So if you go down and you take a look at anything in the Red Rock Deserts of Arizona or Utah, you are not going to see just one color. You're going to see a variation of colors all the way through it. Well, you want to kind of bring that in to your mix with your sandstones as well. You want a variety of color. You want some depth to that color. You want it to feel like there's actual movement and something going on. Okay, here we go. Let's start this again. The next layer that I'm going to do, I want a slight variation in it. So I'm not going to use quite the same color mix. It's going to be close, but it's not going to be quite the same thing. And again, just kind of pull your nice big broad brush there. If the paint gets too far on one side, I just go to the top of my palette. I'll just kind of put the paint there, then pick it back up and move it the way that I want to move it. Here we go. We're starting to get some sandstone. Starting to get some variations. There's a lot more detail that you add at a later date, but really the first thing you should be concerned about is blocking in. Blocking in is going to let you get two things done. One, You're going to be able to see your painting come alive. And two, it gives you something to work off of. Now, I do things a little bit different than some other artists out there. I'm going to end up using some really dark colors for my delineation later on. But what I'm doing right now, again, just getting it blocked in. There we go. We've got kind of a red sandstone coming in here. And the bricks have to have some unevenness to them. If all your bricks are even and there's no variations in your bricks, it's just not going to be interesting whatsoever. So you guys decide how you want to do it, because that's your painting. As Bob Ross used to say, it's your own little world. And anybody who doesn't know who Bob Ross is and has tuned into a live painting, well, shame on you. Okay. I'm going to get a little bit more orange in there. And I'm just loading up my brush nice and heavy on this stuff and just pulling it in. Just kind of slap it on as fast as I can so that I can get moving to the next steps. And we can actually use some of this orange inside our space nebula. We'll just use the edge of the brush and bring it in there. Okay, going to pop into some dark black here. And I want to create some movement inside my nebula. And I want to get my contrast nice and heavy in areas. Again, moving over to my makeup brush. The space nebulas are one of those things you really don't see how it's going to form up until you're almost done with it. Let's focus on it for just a second, shall we? Okay, let's give you guys a couple of stars here. If your stars are too heavy, don't worry about it. You're in the beginning stages of your painting right now. Get some of our space gas moving around here. And you'll see that I just brought it in with the fine part of this brush, and then I'm using the same brush in some clockwise and counterclockwise motions just to get some movement. Now I'm going to bring in some dark blue so that I can get a real nice feel for some of this. If you don't have a variety of colors inside your space nebula, it's just not going to look normal. Back to the makeup brushes. This time I'm going to pop over to one that's got a little bit more of a shortened feel to it. I'm going to get it a bit wet. And I'm going to start pulling it in. Now, if you've ever taken a look at some of the things from the Webb telescope or from the Hubble, you'll start to see the way that the nebulas form here. I love looking at those images. They're all kinds of fun. I also particularly enjoy talking to the people who are flat earthers because they're funny as can be. That's definitely an indictment on our education system to have people who believe in the Flat Earth Society. And believe me, if one of you guys out there watching this is a Flat Earth Society, argue with me inside my chat because that can only help the algorithm. Okay, let's leave that for a minute in order to dry, and we're going to move back over to our big flat brush and our sandstone again. I'm going to pull in some burnt sienna, some transparent burnt umber. I'm going to mix it with what I already had for sandstone, and I'm going to start bringing in some variations in the stone. Cover over a little bit of what I've already got. And you can start to see your ruins just form in front of you there. Use this darker stuff up in the corners. One of the nice things that I like about Payne's Gray is when I do my corners, since it's a naturally transparent medium, I can put a big blob on there after it's dry, and it will just naturally make it look darker, just like what I've done over here. So I waited for it to dry and I went ahead and did that. Okay, we've got some sandstone working here. Bring in some of that color into some of the others. You want to kind of you want it to be interesting, but you don't want it to all be the same. And you don't want it to all be different either. Okay, so the people who are still tuned in, go ahead and give me a shout in the comments. Let me know you guys are out there and ask any questions that you've got as we go along the way here, okay? Again, we're going to go to our sandstone color that we've already got mixed up. Pull in a little bit of burnt sienna and some transparent burnt umber. And bring the colors back around. I'm not going to touch the inside of the arch yet. I want to wait until I've got a different color, something more vibrant in there, or until I know exactly how my space nebula is going to come out, how it's going to look. Okay, for those just tuning in, what we're doing is a sandstone ruins with a space nebula in the center. In fact, let's just pull in some of our bricks down here real quick, shall we? Our bricks down here, and maybe we've got a floating one right there. Put it in perspective. I've already got my perspective lines out here. I'm going to make each one of these a little bit uneven. They're not going to be the same kind of brick all the way through because that would be boring. I am still using my big broad brush. You can use the edge of your brush to get some more interesting smaller cobblestones going on. Maybe that one's a great big cobblestone. Get your variation in there because without the variation it's just not going to look right. Don't let each one of your grids take over the rest of it. You want it to be like interlocking bricks. Kind of like Tetris. Tetris would be a good way to describe what you want to have going on here. You can start to watch your floor come in. Gives you an idea. I don't worry about too much of my shading at this point because I'm going to use my favorite makeup brushes and Payne's Gray to darken up any of my corners as I go along. People who tune in all the time will hear me talk about Payne's Gray over and over and over again. The two colors that I use the most, that I have the most fun with, are transparent burnt umber and Payne's Gray. I love them. I love the way that they work. Both of them are a semi-transparent paint. They give me an opportunity to come back over existing paint and give it a natural shading. And the best way to do it is with a makeup brush, because that makeup brush gives you something you will not find elsewhere. There we go. That's a pretty good floor for right now, right guys? Let's get back to our sandstone up in the corners. I'm going to get a little bit more of my yellow, my medium yellow, my yellow ochre, some titanium white, a little bit of my red. Now I've got a good sandstone color going on here. And I'm just going to keep on pulling it in and making the variations as I go. I don't want my brush strokes to be super even on each one of the stones. I want them all to be a little bit different. In fact, we're going to make this one big stone that interlocks out there. And I like that idea so much that we're going to do the same thing here. That'll be an interlocking stone, and so will this one. These variations in your stone are going to make things interesting. It's going to make it so that the viewer of your painting has a little bit more to grab a hold of. That's a good one there as well. I'm going to get into my burnt sienna and my transparent burnt umber. I want more of a brown look for this. I'm not going to go with much red. I'm going to bring that up here in these corners. I can probably darken that up a little bit more later. but that's what it looks like. There's an itty bitty one right there. And again, I'm leaving the spaces that I put in there because I want to be able to get that blue-gray from the background pulling in. And I want it to feel nice. Now we're on to some different stones here, so I'm going to go mostly transparent burnt umber for these horizontal stones that are not part of my circle here. And if it doesn't appear dark enough, I'll just go over it a little bit more later. Let's get that one as an interlocking stone too. Okay, let's move to our nebula. Our nebula right now is a little bit too shiny for what I like. I'm going to dip into a big makeup brush, and I'm going to soften it all up. It's going to take some of that shine off of it. It's going to naturally mix some of it for me. And that's going to help me out with my space nebula a bit more. Get some of that space gas back there. I don't want to touch too much down in the bottoms. I want my corners and my edges to be very dark. And all I did was get it wet. I'm not adding any kind of paint to it right now. So it's going to move the paint around for us. And that's going to give us a chance to see that space gas work in there. I'm going to get into some black for just a minute with the exact same brush. And I'm going to pull it from the corners. And the edges. All right. It is really quiet out there in the chat. I know I've got 5 people that are on here. Somebody say something because I'd like to talk with you guys as I'm going along. If you have a question, go ahead and ask, and I'll do my best to answer. I want the center to have a little bit more dark right there and spiral out from that point to give me the contrast that I like. Again, this is all done with one giant makeup brush at this point, and that's it. All right, I'm done with that makeup brush for a minute, and I'm going to let the Space Nebula dry up again, and I'm going to move straight over to doing some more of my bricks. This time I'm going to go right into my transparent burnt umber. I'm going to pull in a little bit of Payne's Gray on it. I'm going to darken this one up over here. I like it to have a couple of brush strokes on it. All right, I'm happy with the way that's moving in. I'm okay with the variation in color as it comes down a bit. As I said, I don't want all of my bricks to be the same color. I want them to have that natural variation in them. Maybe this one's really dark right there. And then these down here. And up in the corner. Let's darken that up a little bit as well. Okay, a couple of tips for you guys out there on paintings. You don't need to spend a ton of money on your product. I don't spend a lot of money on my paint. I don't spend a lot of money on my brushes. And yet I still come out with a lot of paintings that sell over and over again. That's because you just have to learn how to paint with what you've got. And I learned to paint when I was very, very poor. Now that I make some good money at it, I still have the same habits of being a poor artist where I don't want to buy anything expensive. I have a little bit of red that I'm bringing into some of these spots right now. Again, I'm just getting some variance in the way that my bricks are going to look. Bring a rounded thing down there at the top, kind of like a medallion. Bring this piece over. I'm not going to touch this inner side here until I get my Space Nebula the way I want. I'm going to bring some of this orange through my Space Nebula. That's looking nice. Okay, let's get back over to what we were doing with our sandstone. Pull some of that stuff in so that it works right. I'm going to get a little bit more of my medium red, some burnt sienna, my medium yellow, titanium white, and this time just a little bit of cerulean blue. Some people call it a sky blue. That's okay. It's a little bit different in color. It's not quite the same, but it gives you a nice pull on one side of it. As you keep on using it on your canvas, it's going to mix the colors for you on your canvas. All right, a couple of things. First of all, if you have not already liked and subscribed, please do so. And on January 10th, there is a painting giveaway. You will find that I have that as an upcoming video. It's scheduled for January 10th. It is one of my fantasy paintings. The painting is actually of an orc samurai holding a wine goblet. So if you haven't seen that one already, you can go and watch that. I painted the face live, so you can find that in my live videos. And then, of course, I did a video as soon as it was complete. And maybe a little bit more over here. Some of this sandstone block is going to be more vibrant because it's sticking out. It's catching a bit more of the light. Maybe that one as well. A little bit over in these spots. Add your variants everywhere that you can. That's really what's going to give you a nice feel to your painting, because you want it to be interesting for your viewers to look at. I think I want to lighten up this area right here. There we go. Okay, a couple of things about the rules for the giveaway. If I'm going to give away a painting and I have to ship it, you've got to be in the United States and you've got to be in the lower 48. I will not ship to Alaska or Hawaii. I'm sorry, you guys are just too far out for me to really want to ship to. It's too expensive, especially for something that's going to be a freebie. So I can't do it. But all you have to do is tune into the live broadcast when I hold it, which is on January 10th. You have to be a subscriber of my channel, which is free. So just like and subscribe. And you have to make a comment when it is live that says, hey, I want that painting. Those are the only rules. You don't pay shipping, you don't pay anything. It is a true giveaway. Just working on the Space Nebula again. You have to work fast when you're working with acrylic. You also have to get your brushes a little bit wet or else they will dry up on you as you're going along. I haven't got quite enough bright areas to my Space Nebula, so I'm going to add some in right now. Just going to use some titanium white over top of what I already have. I'm just going to treat them like clouds. The difference with a Space Nebula is, well, your light's coming from a lot of different areas inside there, isn't it? I am going to choose one spot that's more vibrant than anything else. I think we'll put that right here in the center. I'll put that in nice and wet and then pull the rest of the paint around some of these. I'm going to switch over to another makeup brush that's dry in order to move that around. That'd be this one right here. Toss that one that I was using in. Here we go. Finally, the space nebula is starting to take shape for us, right? Well, it doesn't always happen all at once. I like this spiral that I've got going on, so I'm going to do my best to keep that. I want to keep a lot of my dark areas in between. I don't want the dark areas on my space nebula to go away because without that contrast, it doesn't look right. I'm going to use some clockwise and counterclockwise strokes depending upon how I want to pull things around. The wet black paint and the wet Payne's gray that's already in there is going to allow me to just pull through it. We're going to let that dry for a minute. Actually, no, we're not. You know what? We're just going to dip straight into some red, some medium red. Oh, I got paint on my wrist, of course. Well, you know, it's an occupational hazard. I'm going to bring the red right through here. Because I've played around with the Space Nebula enough that you guys need to be able to watch it come to life. Put the red along the edges of some of my white. Great thing about paint is if I don't like something, I can always go back over top of it. I'm okay with that for now. Now we'll let that dry. Let's go back to some of our sandstone. I'm going to use a finer tip brush now. This one right here. I'm going to reach in and find some very bright titanium white, mix it with my sandstone color I already have on my palette, and I'm going to bring some highlights in here to my cobblestones. Now, one of the things you guys may want to know is if you ever want to find me in person, I'm generally at a lot of different conventions. In February, I will be in 2 places at once. Well, I won't, but my artwork will be. In February, I'm going to be in Pasco, Washington as the gaming guest of honor and have a bunch of paintings inside their art show. I'm the gaming guest of honor because every single one of my paintings goes on a card game that I created called I Magi, Kingdom of Thor card game. Card game plays unlike anything else that you've ever seen before. The basis of the game is in the second I Magi novel. Our hero Bjorn meets Thor in Thor's realm. And Thor explains that Loki tricked him into destroying it with his power. So Thor accidentally split it into the separate elements of earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And your job is to make sets of those 5 cards and rebuild the kingdom of Thor. If you want to know more about that card game, take a look at imagicardgame.com. That's I-M-A-G-I cardgame.com. All we're doing is making highlights on the stones that we already have. That's on anything that's high enough that it's going to, I really like the dip I'm getting here. Anything that's high enough that it would get the light reflected or refracted off of it. Now in this one, our light source for most of this is coming from the nebula, which the nebula's rather nebulous right now. We haven't got a lot of it to it. The other light source that I'm going to be aware of is over here. I'm going to have a bowl on top of this stump, and I will have flames coming out of the bowl. So I will have 2 light sources that I have to contend with because, you know, why make things easy on you? Now, I do want to give a shout out just in case she is listening. My high school art teacher recently got in touch with me and she bought a couple of paintings from me. Now, high school for me was, well, 30 years ago. But she bought a couple of paintings and I hope she's tuning in because she was the most influential artist that I ever dealt with. She taught me more than any of the college professors, because any of the college professors where I got my degree, well, they were a waste of time and space. Okay. We've got some highlights in there. Why don't we mix up a little bit more orange and give us a more mid-tone and maybe a couple of shadows in there? We're going to take orange, some cerulean blue, some transparent burnt umber, and some burnt sienna. A little more yellow. And there we go. I'm happy with this one a bit more. And I'm just going to bring in some more variance in the color. Get my bricks really having some fun here. The paint is still wet while it's on the canvas. The more I pull the paint off of the brush that I've got, the more it's going to mix with the white and the highlights that I've already got on here. All right, there we go. Okay, a couple of things some people will ask me. They'll say, hey, why don't you have more of a professional setup? Well, guys, I'm not a professional YouTuber. I'm a professional artist. I sell my paintings. I don't make any kind of money off of ads. So the only way that you guys can really support me is if you buy a painting, you buy a print. You can end up getting a limited edition print from me that's 8x10 of this exact painting for $25 if you're in the lower 48 states. If you want the original, you can buy the original at half price of what I normally charge at the conventions. At the conventions, I normally sell one of these paintings for upwards of $500. If you end up purchasing it because you are a subscriber on my YouTube channel, you get to buy the original painting at just $250. If you'd like a full-size 16x20 canvas print, you can end up buying that canvas print from me for only $100. And both of those prices include the shipping to get to you, as long as you are not in Hawaii or Alaska. Hawaii, Alaska, I'm sure you guys are beautiful out there, but no, I will not ship to you. It's just not going to happen, so don't ask. Well, I guess if somebody wanted to pay for the shipping, but believe me, it's a lot of money to ship a painting. I kept this a little bit darker over here. I'm going to use some different techniques to keep that dark. I've got a little more light over here. This light from the fire is going to shine, and this light coming through here is going to shine. Let's go back to working on our nebula, shall we? Let's just dip straight into some white, get it a little bit wet, and put it on this brush right here. Just going to bring in some lines. This is not the way the lines are going to fit while they're in here. It's just the way they are right now. It doesn't even have to be a space nebula. If you wanted to paint this painting and do some kind of a painting of your own, I did take a photo of it. You can order a print of this from me with just the outline, and then you can paint it at home. And that would be the same price. It's $100 for a full-size 16x20 canvas print, and then you guys can paint at home. Watch the video, follow along, use some of the techniques that I use, get yourself a set of makeup brushes. Okay, a rule for painting with some acrylic: go fast. A rule for making money as an artist: paint fast. If you can't paint quickly as an artist, you're not going to make very much money at it. If you're painting for the joy of painting, that's great. That's how I started out. That's how everybody starts out. If you're painting to make money at it, you better learn how to paint quickly. Because without painting quickly, you're not going to make it. All right, I'm going to get some sky blue. And since I've got that white in there, it's going to show up fairly well right over top of some of those areas that I put white. It's going to give me a little bit more contrast in areas as well. It's going to bring in some color depth that's going to make it more interesting for the viewer. Maybe we bring some down this way. Kind of connect it with the bricks. All right, makeup brushes, makeup brushes, makeup brushes. I talk about them all the time. Why? Because they make my job easier and they'll make your job easier as well. I want some phthalo blue. And I want it because I want to get this a little bit darker inside some areas without bringing in too much more black. Some people will ask why I keep on covering up different sections of it, because I'm playing with the painting as I'm making it. Not every painting that I do has an exact idea from the beginning. In fact, most of them don't have an exact idea. I'm just kind of painting along as I go. You know what? I like the idea of covering a little bit of that with some blue. We'll get that feeling really well there. Okay. All right. The brush is cleaned up. It has a little bit of water still on it, but not a lot. You always want to dry these by dragging them across a nice towel. I have several towels inside my studio just for that purpose at any given time. Really loving the way my Space Nebula is coming out. It's almost time to put in some hard white lines and then some hard dark lines in my Space Nebula. In fact, let's do that right now. I'm going to go straight into white. I'm going to put it on a little chisel brush, a very small one here. And I'm going to pull in some hard lines. Turn your brush a little bit as you do some of these. It's going to make your lines much more interesting. Let your brush just kind of skitter across your painting. Get a little bit going in a couple of different directions. And then back to the makeup brush again. The makeup brush is just barely going to soften this. And all your Space Nebula is just space clouds. So if you've watched one of my other paintings where I teach you guys how to do clouds, well, that's all you're doing with this thing is you're making clouds. You're just making them in a really unusual way. There we go. Let's bring some of that down there. Get a little bit of a glow. If I go over top of this, it's all right. Kind of gives it that atmospheric perspective of sinking into the painting. In fact, I'm going to pull some of that paint and just go over top of it there. Let's put some stars in, shall we? Stars are easy. All you got to do with your stars, just mix up your white paint. In this case, I've got it mixed a little bit with my yellow. That's okay. I don't mind that at all. I'm going with an itty bitty brush. I'm going to come up to the top and pull it until I have it on a point. And then I'm just going to dot some stars in. The stars are starting to come in just right for us. Your space scene takes on a little bit more form once you get your stars in. Try to get more of a random feel to it, so jump around your painting in a bunch of places. We're going to come in with some more dark paint in just a minute to get that to separate and really give us more to look at. And then the last thing we'll work on is this arch right here. If you have any questions, ask me them inside the chat. I always like to keep an eye on that, find out if I'm paying attention. Some people will get wet paint and just flip it onto the canvas. If I did that, I'd have to cover all this stuff up first. And if you have not already liked and subscribed, please do so that you can end up seeing these things all the time as I make them. We've got a couple of brushes that I've been letting soak so that I can get them all clean. The problem with that is that as you go along, you'll end up with something like this. You'll pull them all out and you've got a whole bunch of them that are all wet now, soaked all the way through. You have to set them off to the side if you're going to get anywhere with that. Dry them up. And let's pull in some dark color. What we're going to do is I'm just going to... This, again, is my Payne's Gray. And I'm just going to use my Payne's Gray to give me separations of colors here. It's something that's dark without being too dark. It's also semi-transparent. It's going to allow me to make some lines through here, separating the space gases. Since it is semi-transparent, it's going to give me a nice feel of pulling across areas and giving some of it a chance to shine through. Then I'll go really dark, like right there, and others, and it doesn't shine through at all. Make sure you soften it up if you've put it in there. Space gas is a long ways away. You're not going to see any kind of hard edges. And maybe just a little bit more here. Some right there. Let's make it feel like we've got a path here. Hey, now we're starting to look more like a space scene. I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to switch over to oh, looks like I've got some right here. You know what? I'm just going to tap that paint that I've got right onto my canvas. I'm going to make it part of the brick. When you start putting some hard lines in your brick, you've got to have a variation in your hard lines. Now, if you guys heard the ambulance in the background, just ignore it. It's not me. They're not coming after me. One of the things you may want to know about trying to collect my paintings is, well, let's see. Let's give you guys a little background. I've survived open heart surgery, knee surgery, 2 ear surgeries. I have been shot, stabbed, run over by a carnival ride. I've had 8 concussions, 2 rollovers, 3 broken ribs, and I'm a full-time artist. Guess which one's the hardest one? That means that if you're going to collect paintings, hey, I may not live very long. It might be a really good idea for you to invest in. Gosh, that's gruesome, right? All right. You can start to see that we now have some detail coming through. That detail is important because it's what's going to give us the look of actual ruins. I'm leaving that area really dark. This is where I talked earlier in the painting about using hard lines. Some artists don't like hard lines. I particularly find them interesting because I use them to my advantage. It might be one of those things where you've got to know the rules in order to break the rules. I'm not saying I know the rules, but I know the rules. And any of the rules that I don't know, I'll just make it up and fake it. You guys don't know. Some of you don't know me from Adam. I may have just started painting yesterday. You've got no idea. You're going to have to just take my word on it. I don't want to cover up all of that background that I've got, because that background gives me a great sink into some of my darker colors. But I do want to make sure that I have enough indication for my viewer that they know what's going on. Okay. I'm just using straight permanent black, and I'm using the exact same brush the entire time for every aspect of my brick. It's important to step back from your painting, get an eye on it, find out where you want to put some more details. If you're in one of these things where you're learning how to paint and you're a little bit slower, don't worry. What you want to do there is sometimes if you get frustrated with it, leave the painting for a bit and then sneak up on it later. Sometimes you have to surprise your paintings because they will surprise you. I'm really happy with the way that we're getting things moving around here. I have a rather loose style of painting. I don't worry about where everything lands. And sometimes after I'm finished with a live painting, I will go back in and do a little bit more detail on it before it's ready to be sold. But generally the painting's ready to be sold as soon as I'm finished with my live broadcast. And again, if you do want to end up painting one of these at home, I always take that photo of it when it's just an outline that I've created. And you guys can order that print on canvas. It'd be 16 by 20, shipped straight to you. And then you can follow along and paint yourself at home. Well, not paint yourself. I mean, I paint myself. I get paint all over me all the time. If you're noticing that there's any places that you're getting drips, you can either choose to make the drips work for you, or you can get really frustrated, throw your canvas across the room, and then come back and paint it later. I would suggest just making it work for you. It's a whole lot more fun that way. I like these bricks. I like the way they interlock. I decided to make that extra round piece there. And I think we're going to do the same thing here. And there. And then that's where it kind of ends. I mean, it's a ruins, right? It's not going to be something that's perfect brick. You're never going to walk into a sewer at the very bottom of all those caverns underneath New York City and find everything looking perfect. The reason we chose ruins is because it's more interesting to look at and it's fun. Okay. You know, this is about the quietest I've ever had the chat on any one of my paintings. Our bricks are looking really good, aren't they? Okay. Only one person on now. I guess nobody wanted to stick to the end of the painting, huh? But that's okay. That's all right. We're getting to the end of where I'm going to be painting live anyway, and I've got to get on to some other things, but I do appreciate everybody tuning in to take a look. Appreciate everyone who has wanted to get a good eye on how to paint one of these. I'm going to keep on painting a few more bricks, and then we're almost to the 1 hour mark on a painting. That's usually when I will sign off. But the person who has stuck with this the longest gets an opportunity to really see this one come to life. Let's see here. You know what? Let's darken up this area right here. Make some more broken bricks. Maybe we've got a broken brick in here. Yeah, this looks good. Okay, now we still have one person who's watching. That's great. If you are new and you have not liked and subscribed to my channel, please make sure that you do. You are the people that I paint for, the people that enjoy watching something come to life. Ask questions as we're going along. All right. We're getting close to the end of this painting. We've been at it for almost an hour from just the outline. Ooh, we really want to make this a hard edge there. I like that. And then I'm just going to use this brush to kind of smooth that over a little bit. That looks like a drip line that I didn't catch earlier. Okay, and I can do the same thing down here for my bricks when I'm adding all of this detail. I can come in and give more delineation just by using the hard edge black. You don't want to do it all the time, but you got to know the rules in order to break the rules. In this case, I can break that hard line rule. And I want to get these cobblestones really popping out, especially this one that's just kind of hanging out there. I'm going to go over top of that one with a little bit more vibrant color later. Anybody who has any questions, if you're still watching, please ask them as we go along. Got a little bit of sagging in the floor here. It's where the stones naturally ended up just setting and sagging and sinking over time. Setting, sagging, and sinking. Say that 10 times really fast. Round some of the corners. Ooh, we got a little bit of drip there. We want to use that as fast as we can and let it move in with the painting. We got a rounded edge there, some nice square ones at the bottom. Okay, we've done a lot of talking through this on how to get these things done. All we're doing now is just the detail work. The detail work is probably the most tedious aspect of it. but it's where if you skip any of the details, your viewer's going to know, the people looking at the painting aren't going to be as happy with it, and they're not going to feel like you really respect them as a viewer. But don't put in too much detail in places where it doesn't need it. Just get enough in the right spots. How do you know it's the right spot? Well, unfortunately, that's the one that comes with experience. You've got to figure that one out over time. Okay. Let's bring a black line through our nebula here, kind of separate that, do the same thing here. I'm just going to bring the brush around. I'm going to roll it as I'm doing that. Maybe soften that one up just a little bit. And then I want to make my nebula more vibrant now, because we've got everything done that we needed to. Well, it's a little too much paint. So I'm going to bring in some lines on my nebula. By the time I'm done with this brush, I'm going to have to replace it because I am going to brutalize the front edge of it. We want our light source inside our nebula. We want to know where it is, what it's doing, where it's coming from. That means you need to really have it bright to go against all of that dark. If you don't have good contrast, you won't have a painting. Bring some down for our path. And then back to our trusty makeup brushes. Why? Because we've got to soften that up just a little bit. So here we go. There we go. Now soft. Don't pull too much on it, or you're going to spread all that white everywhere. You don't want it to be everywhere. You just want it to be in enough places. You don't want to get rid of all of those hard lines. You just want to get rid of some of them. And then it's going to be important to get yellow. This is one of the things, just like when you are painting clouds. Clouds, yellow is what's going to make your clouds brighter. Same thing with your nebula, because that's just space clouds. Yellow is going to make your white brighter. And this is the thickest area for our light source. So we want more in there than anywhere else. And there it is, guys. Now we've got space gas, a nebula. The only thing we're missing is over here. We didn't get to our stump and our bowl and our fire yet. Soften that up, keep the hard line in spots. My brush got a little bit dry, so I'm going to need to get it wet again in order for it to separate things. Oh, I like that. That trail right there is really helping. Now we're starting to get the feel of some space clouds. And then maybe bring it down, down, down for our path. And that's it. We're done. We could go in and finish this up real quick. You know what? Yeah, let's do that real fast. Why not? Let's get our sandstone. We're going to get a makeup brush. I'm going to show you guys that I've stuck around for the whole thing, just how fast this can go in. I'm going to keep some of the blue in that. I'm not going to cover it all up. Just some of it. That is very wet paint, by the way. So if it's very wet paint, thicken it up by getting a thicker paint. I'm going to bring some of these edges out just a little bit. As you've seen me do earlier, those black lines are what's really going to separate everything and make it look different. And I'm going to use vibrant yellow through here. I want vibrant yellow in two places. I want it on my leading edge inside and on my back edge, because that's what's going to give me the contrast that separates it from the other parts of the sandstone arch. Let's go ahead and get just some black. And I know that one's there, that one's there, that's there. Maybe one there. That's a big brick. I'm not too worried if I pull too much inside, because I'm going to use this in the painting. I can get my white and my yellow, and I'm going to mix it up really, really strong. I'm going to get this line and edge to it. This is going to separate my bricks. And then the same thing back here. I don't care if I go too much inside here, because I can always wait until it dries, which it dries quick because it's acrylic. And then I can use the black on the inside to make my lines nice and hard. I want this area to be lighter than anything else, this arch. I don't want it to mix with the stuff in the background. So I'm going to add a lot of variance. That is a lot of paint on there. But all of my variants that I put in here are going to be nice and bright and vibrant. And then I'm going to go to my trusty makeup brushes to mix it right on the canvas for me. These makeup brushes, I tell you, they are a miracle. You can pull so much paint in such a short amount of time with very little effort. Again, when you're doing this and you've got a hard edge here and a hard edge back here, don't worry about whether or not the paint's going in and out. You can fix that later just with your hard lines. But for now, peeps, there we go. That's it. The only thing we didn't do is our stump in the corner. We've still got some other things that we can add details to. But thanks for tuning in. Thank you very much for watching me do it, and thanks for being part of my community that has liked and subscribed. Have a great day.